And thanks so much for joining in with Fight Night Picks !Kicks. Make sure you head on over to the website, fightnightpicks.com. I know a lot of Fight Night Picks fans don't know that we have an all-inclusive website that hosts some of our YouTube content. You can find the new interviews with Joe Selecki and Sasha Plotnikov with our newest addition to the team, JHK MMA. We also have other great articles in the podcast as well that are over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Maybe you want to check out this weekend's full card betting guide. What's Joshua Hart thinking this weekend? Hey, maybe his best bets are JP Bays and Grant Dawson. All kinds of great stuff on the site. But the thing that I'm most excited to show you about, the shop, the Fight Night Picks shop. You want to wear the shirts and the different things that we wear on air. You can check it all out there. Maybe you want your own Under Armour t-shirt. Well, I've got a special deal for you from now until UFC 261. If you head on over to the shop, use the promo code FNP25 and you're going to save 25% off your order, because I want you to be able to have some of this great Fight Night Picks gear for yourself. Use that code in the coupon section. You're going to save 25% off. So FNP25 from now until next weekend's UFC 261. Without further ado, let's get into it. Fight Night Picks is brought to you by Vertiball. Head on over to their website. It's vertiball.com. And listen, it's an awesome product. It's a local company out of New Brunswick, Canada. So make sure you support those guys locally as well as Fight Night Picks. But they're the only mountable portable muscle massager. They can stick onto any smooth surface. They've got an industrial strength suction cup. Can support over 100 pounds of pressure. You can get really into those deep knots. I have one here at home. I use it for my back and my shoulders from holding up that Fight Night Picks Pick'em trophy. But listen, make sure you check them out. It's a great product. Like I said, they're recommended by physiotherapists, masseuses, and chiropractors across Canada, the US, UK, and Australia. And they're used by countless professional athletes like Minkah Fitzpatrick on screen there, as well as Clelin Ferrell of the Raiders. So if you head into the cart, make sure you check them out. So I've got a Vertiball massager in my cart right there. Use the promo code FNP. You're going to save 10% off your order. You're supporting this company here that I'm very passionate about in New Brunswick, Canada, and you're helping out us as well. So make sure you check them out, vertiball.com, promo code FNP, 10% off your order. And without further ado, let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, recorded in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. It's time for Fight Night Picks with your host, Craig and Matt Allen.
Oh boy, and Matt, we're back and live, getting ready for UFC Vegas 22. We got Kevin Holland and Derek Brunson in the main event, and it's kind of crazy because you get the hype train of Kevin Holland. We haven't seen him since late last year. He was our Fight Night Picks Fighter of the Year. This is just a really interesting card, especially since we lost our originally scheduled co-main event today.
Oh, that's so upsetting, because I know how excited we both were for that main event, or co-main event, I should say, because, of course, Gregor Gillespie, we haven't really seen him since, well, I guess we could talk about the crime that Kevin Lee committed against him. It's been such a long time off for Gillespie, and he was a guy who a lot of people thought could eventually challenge Khabib because of how good his wrestling is. And Brad Riddell is basically a 10 out of 10 in striking, but with really good takedown defense, too, so it was a really fun style, just clash, really, in the co-main event. Really upsetting that we aren't able to see it tonight, but the good news is that they are rescheduling it for sooner rather than later, so we are still going to be able to see those guys. But Kevin Holland and Derek Brunson, that's the fight that I'm really excited for, and I'm so glad we're going to be able to see 5 rounds of it tonight.
Should be a great one. Really appreciate, well, the devil over in the super chat hitting us up with the $5, just $5 from the parlay. You're about to win. So, again, we have that co-main that's out. Gregor Gillespie, Brad Riddell off the card due to COVID protocols. Hopefully both guys are all right. The corners and coaches are all right. And like you said, we get that fight rebooked soon. Now, the new co-main event, you have Song Kanan taking on One Tough Out in Max Griffin. Should be an amazing fight. Matt, let's flip it on over to our Fight Night Picks Fight of the Night. We'll have a little bit of a talk about it because, well, I just moved the screen and we're all over the place. But we're getting ready for this one. You've got Max Griffin, you got Song Kanan. Wow, this should be an explosive fight.
I think it will be good. Now, here's the thing. I gotta be honest. I wouldn't have this as my fight of the night. I understand one half of the FNP family might love Max Griffin. I don't want to put that word along with it, but Craig, let's be honest. You're a big fan of Max Griffin. And here's the thing. Max Griffin doesn't have a boring fight. That's one of the few things you can go in to a Max Griffin fight knowing that you're going to get. It will be entertaining. And does he always beat the upper echelon guys? No, he doesn't. But he's a perfect example of an unranked fighter who's just always going to give you an entertaining fight. And I do think this fight fight against Song Kenan is going to be a great match. You've got the accurate striking of Kenan versus the overall well-roundedness and, of course, the boxing of Max Griffin. I think it'll be a great fight.
Over in the comments section, a lot of great ones so far. Todd's hanging out. Voodoo Wiz. We get Just My 2 cents. Giancarlo up top. Jeremy, Gregor Gillespie won't win. Well, he could win if they rebook the fight. But yeah, I love this one. I also love Adrian Yanez, Gustavo Lopez. And it was hard to get a really good read on this because if you look at Gustavo Lopez, he loses a short notice UFC debut against one really tough out in, well, the Georgian wrecking ball that we know in Rob Dvalishvili. And then if you look at his next fight, he demolishes Anthony Burchak. So it's kind of two different extremes. And then if you look at Adrian Yanez, well, he destroyed Victor Rodriguez, who came in on short notice, and he absolutely demolished Brady Huang over on Contender Series. But, man, this is such a good fight because you know how good Yanez can be? Gustavo Lopez, you can't count him out whatsoever. A guy out of Extreme Couture down in Vegas. And he has that Extreme Couture style that we always talk about. I love the fight. I think this is an awesome one.
It should be a really fun fight. And for Adrian Yanez, he does have all those kind of marketability X factors. He speaks very well. He's handsome. He kind of looks like Jorge Masvidal. And he's a really fun fighter to watch. And he does have a really good style that's very fan-friendly. He goes out there, gets a ton of knockouts. For Gustavo Lopez, like you had said, we don't really know where he belongs in the UFC right now. You can lose to a guy like Merab Dvalishvili, and there's no shame in that whatsoever. But for Yanez, I really hope he can become everything I thought Jonathan Martinez was going to be. Now, I understand that's a bit of a weird way of saying I really hope he's going to be good in the future, but I did come on this show and say Jonathan Martinez could be top 15 of whatever weight class he decides.
He still could be.
He still could be. Don't get me wrong. But I really do think Adrian Yanez, his ceiling is a top 10 guy one day. He's got phenomenal striking. He's got really good takedown defense. And I think he'll be able to put on a show tonight. So excited for this fight.
Prince Vegeta's son. Lopez is getting taken down at will, though. Yeah, because it's Merab Dvalishvili. Like, that's going to happen.
Exactly.
That makes sense. Cody Keller is hanging out. We'll flip it back over to our usual, regular, everyday screen. Sean McMinn hitting us up in the super chat. Alex hitting us up as well.
Thank you,
7
guys.
for 7 2 weeks ago with FNP. Listen, we always appreciate the super chat. Keep hitting it up. Do whatever you can. But I like to kind of at least give you something physical that you can have with you. We have that sale on the site. I preached about it in the intro, but you check it out, fightnightpicks.com. Use promo code FNP25. You can pick up some of the hats. We have the Under Armour hats with the Canada logo, the Maple Leaf. We got some of those like MLG jersey type shirts. We have actual jerseys, baseball jerseys. There's all kinds of great stuff. So if you want to hit it up over there, I had an order that I shipped out actually this morning, Matt. So yeah, I mean, lots of great stuff. I'm going to move our camera around because we're going to keep it on this angle. And we're going to go all the way down through the card as we always do. But we're going to try and hit up the chat more this week. I mean, of course, you lost that fight in the co-main event. You lost Burchak and Johnny Eduardo. Like, I was so hyped for that. Johnny Eduardo was in UFC 2, UFC 3, UFC 4. Hadn't won a fight since 2016. Like, I was getting excited for it, but it is what it is. Hong is saying, if Song wins, I'll subscribe. And El Blanco is saying we look like vampires. Well, El Blanco, sometimes we are Blanco. And listen, you got to turn the light on.
It's spring now in Canada, though, and things are getting nice, so hopefully we won't be pale vampires forever.
F. Carrillo is hanging out. We get Phoenix Graves, as always, asking for some likes. And all right, Matt, we will talk about the entire card, top to bottom. Like I said, we'll hop back in and out of the chat. So let's start at the bottom. F. Carrillo, or is it Carrillo? You're hitting us up. Let's go. Text in the house. We appreciate you in the super chat. Let us know how to properly say your name. Bruno Silva taking on JP Bays. It's a really interesting fight, and I remember talking about it back when we made the original prediction video. If you kind of went a little weird and a little wonky, Bruno Silva could have beaten Tagir Ulanbekov, depending on which judge scored it which way. He could have won his debut if he didn't kind of gas near the end. And in his second fight against David Dvorak, if he didn't gas, he probably could have won that one too. The gas tank's been an issue for Bruno Silva, but what he does well is, well, just about everything. It's just when he takes on a Tagir Ulanbekov's slightly better at grappling and wrestling than him. When he took on David Dvorak's just a bit of a better guy with his pressure and with his speed and his overall striking game. And Khalid Taha was up a weight class, and Taha was one juicy boy. He got suspended by USADA. So for me, Bruno Silva, has he lost a lot of fights? Well, yeah, I mean, he's lost a few. But then you go back and look at his record. I mean, he has a draw against one really tough out who just took on Dominic Cruz last weekend. He's had a good run. It's just a 10-5-2 record might scare you. For JP Bays, I mean, you look at it. His last loss, Joby Sanchez. It's going to happen. He had a loss really early on in his career as well. He's on a tidy little win streak coming into this one. You like that. There's been a nice stretch of the 5 on in. If you go through it, Philip Rauch over with EFC, Gamzat Magomedov, that was an illegal elbow 2 years ago. He beats Luthando Biko with EFC, comes over with LFA, beats Christian Rodriguez, who was 4-2, and then he beats Jacob Silva. The trouble for me, and I've been scared about this one, Walter Huff hanging out in the super chat, is that Silva's taken on a really tough level of competition. JP Bays hasn't, and that's kind of scared me off of this one this week. All of the money this week is coming on Bruno Silva. I just want to say this before I hand it over. At Fight Night Picks over on Instagram, you're going to talk about us with the total votes and this and that. At Fight Night Picks on Instagram, Saturday morning, I fire up the laptop, I do up the graphics, I send them over there, and then you see them in front of you right now. 283 total votes for Bays, 138 roughly for Silva. 2/3 are going with JP Bays. What are you thinking here?
I think Bays is going to win. No, I do, because here's the thing. For Bruno Silva, and you brought it up, Bruno Silva's lost to good fighters, and I'm going to pick Bays. That's still my prediction, but I can fully admit that waking up tomorrow, Bruno Silva could completely dominate Bays, and it is one of those dangerous fights to predict because you look at what Bruno Silva does. Well, he's a really well-rounded mixed martial artist, but you keep on saying, oh, if he didn't get tired, if he didn't get tired. If Damian Maia was good at striking, he would have a title. That's a very big if. If he had cardio is one of the bigger things that you're missing out on really in your MMA skill set. And the fact that Bruno Silva, as long as you make him work in those first 2 rounds, he will tire. He does have that Ronnie Yaya effect where no matter what happens in the fight, I can guarantee you by that 3rd round, he is going to be tired. So I'm still going to pick Bays in this fight. I do think his wrestling is going to make Bruno Silva at least defend takedowns through the majority of this fight. And if he's the one on offense trying to take Bays down, he'll be able to defend a lot of those takedowns. And again, a lot of fighting Silva comes down to the fact that you just have to make him work early on in the fight. I think Bays can get that done. I think he'll be able to hold on for a decision.
Craig P. Higgins asking, what's the word on the new logo? What new logo? Is there a new Fight Night Picks logo? Like, I got a Montreal Impact jersey hoodie today. If you're thinking pop and popcorn, this is definitely one. So if you're talking new logo and you want a pop and popcorn type of stuff, I was actually looking at ordering some today. But that's why we have the FNP sale going on right now, because people got to pick up some of that merch so I can get it out from in front of me. A lot of people are talking about the Santos fight, and we'll get into it. Voodoo Wish, you think that Bays is going to be too much for Silva? Lee Meldrum, wow, Mr. and Mrs. Bays are both fighters fighting on the same card. What are the odds? I'll tell you what the odds are. Let's have fun with it, Matt. Let's get a little freaky fresh. JP Bays open to -170. Went as far as a -243. He's now -145. All week the money's come in on Bruno Silva. Silva open a +145, as high as a +195, now at a +120. I'm going to flip the pick. I'm flipping the pick. I'm going to go with Bruno Silva. Listen, I talked about it. Depending on which judge scored it, one of the judges gave the 3rd round to Bruno Silva against Tagir Ulanbekov. It was a very close fight. I know Tagir won it. It was a unanimous decision, but it was really weird. The David Dvorak fight, I think Dvorak is going to be a guy that we're going to see for a long time in the UFC. I don't know if he's going to be a top 10 guy, but I really like his style personally. But for me, JP Bays is good. But if he takes on a very good wrestler, he spends too much time on his back. Like, there's just certain things that I worry about with him. I love the Fortis MMA connection, I really do. But I really love the Fight Ready MMA connection with Bruno Silva and the Pitbull connection there. So I'm switching my pick, which doesn't happen very often. I'm going to go with Bruno Silva in this one, and you're going to go with JP Bays. Now, that's an important switch of a pick. So we'll continue on with the card. And let us know what you're thinking in our next fight, Matt. Connor Murray's hanging out. And Wedgie Apex is saying, will Montel KO Strader? Great question. So let's talk about this one, Matt. We've got Montel Jackson, Jesse Strader. Strader weighed in 137.5. The guy's a knockout artist. He has the hands. We made the jokes, you know, Fool's Gold is a very underappreciated song. It's only got 3 million views on YouTube. Aaron Carter, maybe he's not as good as, you know, what he used to be in the early 2000s, but I still like that tune. And he actually either did or was supposed to come to Fredericton to do a concert at Club Chrome.
There you go.
Kind of crazy. Now he's training with Jesse Strader. Strader's one of those guys that, again, all or nothing. His boxing's great. I went over and read Sean Bitter's kind of preview for it, Cage Side Press. He gave Strader an A- for striking, and I think that's fair. Like, the guy is...
It's not, though.
The guy's a good striker, and the guy's a good boxer. So I do like Jesse Strader from that respect. But, I mean, the guy's a first-round type of guy. He's all or nothing. So either he goes out there and knocks out Montel Jackson in the first, or nothing like that happens.
If you miss weight on short notice, you're not an A- striker. I'm sorry, and here's all the reasons why. if you're going to miss weight, that means A, you either had a really bad weight cut, or B, you did not train much for this fight. And it was on short notice. So again, you can be forgiven for not training for this fight, but that's still going to be an issue. You're coming into this fight not the full version of yourself. You're going to be a lesser version than what we're used to. And for Strader, he has good striking, but if you're an A-, like, there's guys in the top 15 I wouldn't say are A- in a lot of divisions. Like, for you to be an A-, you basically, in my mind, have to be like Edson Barboza for striking. I'm not ready to say Strader is near even close to that level. I think he's the better, more heavy-handed of these two strikers in this fight, but I think Montel Jackson's going to completely ragdoll him. I don't see this fight being very competitive.
If you have a look at the votes at Fight Night Picks, 83% going with Montel Jackson. He's one of the bigger favorites on this card. He's actually the biggest favorite. Open to minus 500, now minus 682. If you look at Strader, open to plus 385. He's now plus 473. This one's not really close, and I don't see Jesse Strader winning this fight unless you want to take like the knockout prop in a first round. Maybe you like that. Listen, he's looked very impressive against lesser competition. And if we actually do go back and look at Jesse Strader, I was kind of surprised because his last opponent actually had a really nice fight booked in Isaiah Batten Gonzalez. He's going to be fighting at LFA 103 against Fernie Garcia. That's a great fight, coming off a loss to Jesse Strader. And then you look at it. He beat Michael Jackson 1-3. He lost to Marcelo Rojo 14-5. All-time banger of a round. That fight was, what, 2.5 years ago? Beat a guy who was 2-1, 3-4, 0-0. They're impressive, and the last one was highlight reel. I just, again, I don't like Strader in this fight.
No, and I think the last thing I'll say on this, I would say we're probably a little bit higher on Montel Jackson than a lot of people are. So maybe we're not looking at this the right way, but I really do think Montel Jackson's going to have one of his easier fights in the UFC tonight.
And if we head on over to the chat, Fail Sundin says Jackson has a 42% chance to end at the first, according to research. Are we going to cite sources?
Advanced statistics.
We're going to cite sources. We'll just go with that, and we'll say it is what it is. Matt, we'll move into the next fight, and I believe I changed the graphic on this one. Yes, I did, because at the start of the week, there was a little asterisk there next to Roman Dolidze's weight, because he was at 205. And if you watch the original prediction video, we popped up Georgie's tweet from, well, Twitter, and the fact that you look at Roman Dolidze, and he normally walks around at 205. He was getting ready for a fight at middleweight, and multiple fighters declined fights with him. They just wouldn't sign the contract. I believe it. Like a full camp Roman, scary guy in general, whether he's training out of Ukraine or Extreme Couture.
And he's going to be a guy who has that kind of Ryan Hall effect. You know what I mean? Like Roman Dolidze, we really like him, but I would say as, you know, it's not like the massive UFC audience really knows who this guy is, but he is right there on the cusp of fighting those guys in the top 20, top 15. But yeah, he is going to have a really hard time getting those guys to want to fight him because he doesn't have this massive following that he's bringing into the cage, but he's a very dangerous fighter and he can get it done no matter where the fight takes place. And the thing that you're going to see tonight, he could land a massive overhand right and completely knock out Trevin Giles, and you're like, wow, this guy fights like Francis Ngannou. Not really. He's a really credentialed grappler, and that is more what his bread and butter is, and that's the exciting thing about Roman Dolidze.
The best thing about Dolidze, and I've seen a lot of commenters out there this week. I mean, Devin Davis saying you're on Dolidze, but Giles always has upset potential. He does, and I know you gave me a hard time in the original prediction video, so let's kind of talk about it a little bit.
Trevin Giles isn't that good, guys.
Trevin Giles, I said, listen, he could get him with a power jab, but he does throw a really nice jab. If you step into it, maybe you have issues. Roman Dolidze,
Deontay Wilder.
Roman Dolidze is too wild, and he's too cocky. And I don't like the fact that he's wild and cocky. And I don't like his gas tank. Normally, would you worry about it at middleweight? I don't worry about it too much. I mean, there was a good point brought up there that, yeah, Dolidze looked really good on the scales. He's a very accredited grappler. His wrestling's quite good as well. It all complements itself. I don't expect him to be a Rodolfo Vieira out there. No. And I think now, having seen him on the scale, I know I kind of had that funny little, it's a Fight Night Picks first, over 1.5. I'm cool with that. I'm cool with over 1.5 in this one, but I'm more cool on Roman Dolidze. Dolidze's the pick.
I just haven't seen enough from Giles, and a lot of people come at me, look how good he looked against Bevon Lewis. Bevon Lewis never looked very good in the UFC, and that's just the fact. Like, we never got the version of Bevon that we were kind of promised when he came into the UFC, and there's probably a bunch of people watching right now who are like, who the hell's Bevon Lewis? Exactly. He was a guy who was very hyped up, but never really had a good UFC career. I think Giles is a good fighter. fighter, but the fact that I've seen him comfortably out-grappled by a guy who should be 2 weight classes smaller than him is very concerning, especially fighting a guy like Roman, who does have such a good grappling background. If he does stay really dedicated to going for trips and throws out of the clinch and really just tries to out-grapple Trevin Giles, I don't think he'll have trouble winning this fight whatsoever.
And I mean, going into the comments section, Not a Robot saying Thierry Henry, Impact legend. Yeah, he just couldn't keep being the manager anymore, so he just had to leave. If we have a look at the total votes, Matt, at Fight Night Picks on Instagram, 71% going Dolidze to the 29% with Trevin Giles. And like I said, I mean, there's a lot of people that are kind of picking upsets here, there, and everywhere. This is one of those ones I'm not going with the old upset potential here. I got Dolidze handily. Hitter Halifax, Tartan Kickboxing, Lower Sackville, Nova Scotia. If you're from Lower Sackville, Nova Scotia, that's where Dragon Energy's from. Drinking the Maritime's own. Matt, we'll get into our next fight. This is the most contentious one in the entire chat. So let us know what you're thinking here, because I've seen a lot of people going with Leonardo Santos. And it's funny, because with Fight Night Picks, predictions, previews, all that stuff, it's like, well, A, what have you done for me lately? But B, if you don't pick Leonardo Santos, you can't be a guy that's been on Leonardo Santos the whole time.
Very true.
If you're out there in the Twitterverse, Keith Schillen put the tweet out there at the start of the week, at Craig Allen, it's the Leonardo Santos fight week. So if you know that I've been talking about this guy since, well, Fight Night Picks turned into anything, back in 2018, but even before that. Leonardo Santos is a G. At ADCC in 2005, he had a jumping armbar on George St. Pierre and finished him. So that's how good Leonardo Santos is.
By the way, have you watched the new episode of Falcon vs. the Winter Soldier? GSP's in it.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome stuff, too.
I didn't know, and then I watched it, and I got really excited. I just had to bring that up.
So, GSP's great, and T.O. Shot GG, we appreciate you for saying thanks for the show.
Normus, you're saying what I'm thinking, too. All those great things you said about Santos are true, but the fact that he is in his 40s is very concerning, and age isn't something that gets brought up enough in MMA, I don't think. We never really talk about guys' ages unless they do pass that, 40 years old threshold. In this fight, I do think that's important. This really is a crossroads fight. I know you're thinking, oh, well, Santos, he really only wins. It's not like he's coming off losses, but the fact that he is so advanced in his career, and you do have a guy like Grant Dawson making his, I guess, divisional debut at lightweight, the UFC knows what they're doing right now, and the UFC wants Grant Dawson to be more of a star than he already is, and they're putting him in there with a 47-year-old who is extremely dangerous, and that's the weird thing. When the UFC does have these sort of, oh, we know who we want to win fights, they put you in against someone who you have a much higher likelihood of beating than a guy like Leonardo Santos, because he can go out there and knock you out. He's got very heavy hands. He's got phenomenal jiu-jitsu, which everyone knows about, and his wrestling is somewhat underrated too, but again, he's one of these guys, if he doesn't get you out of there early, he's going to have a tough time in that second and third round, and with a guy like Grant Dawson, who can get on top of you, he has such good top control, he's not someone who's going to jump from like full guard into mount and take a lot of risks on top. He's going to be really heavy, and he's just going to be a really smart fighter in the grappling department. So I do like Grant Dawson quite a bit in this fight.
I mean, here's a couple of things that I don't like. If you look at Grant Dawson, he closes distance with jump knees and really awkward, flimsy striking. His boxing's bad.
It is, but the problem
bad.
with Santos is Santos doesn't throw straight shots. All of his shots are looping. So unless he is able to catch you with an overhand right, like he's Fedor Emelianenko, I don't think he can do it.
I mean, Santos does have a piston of a right hand, and if I go over into the chat, Mitchell Williams saying, "What's up, guys? Sucks about the Riddell fight." Yes, it does. And then wants to hear about Manscaped. You hear about that before the co-main event. You always do. And Tyler's saying, "What's up, my New Brunswick boys? How's she going, bud?" I mean, listen. It's a nice day in New Brunswick. It's a little cold, but at least we don't have so much wind. Just my 2 cents. Santos is better than the guys Grant has been beating. Everybody's buying into the glory hype. What glory? Oh, the glory MMA hype? Yeah, I mean, that's fine. Bub Collins saying we don't call locks, but anything close. Manpreet's MMA lock of the night. If Manpreet's got a lock, you go check it out with him.
He knows.
But again, if I'm looking at this one, Matt, the things that I like out of Grant Dawson that I don't really like with Leonardo Santos, Santos was fading against Bogatov that just gave him a lot of pressure. Grant Dawson's a pressure fighter and a top control guy. Could Santos submit him? Well, in the first round, 100%. He could even knock him out in the first round, and I'd wake up the next day and wouldn't be surprised at all. So this is one of those ones that it's a pop and popcorn for me because I've always been a Leo Santos guy. If we look at Fight Night Picks on Instagram, 76% on Grant Dawson, and he's an overwhelming favorite here too. I mean, you have a look at the odds. Grant Dawson comes in over 2-1, open minus 185. He's minus 209 right now for Leonardo Santos, somewhere in around plus 170, plus 175. So I'm going with Grant Dawson. Again, I do worry about the flying knees to close distance, the spinning attacks. Santos can strike like a mother effer. I mean, look at what he did to Stevie Ray, who was looking good before that fight. Like, Stevie Ray was looking good. Scotland represent. And then you look at his last fight against Bogatov, who thought, well, nut shots are all right and eye pokes are cool. I'm just going to knee him right in the head illegally.
I don't know if Stevie Ray's the fighter who you want to bring up when you want to try to emphasize how good another guy is, but I like Grant Dawson. I hate the odds, and that's the problem. I don't think he should be a 2-1 favorite in this fight because Santos is very underrated, and he's not someone who fights all that often. And I understand it's very easy to forget about him just in the mix at 155, but he's a very dangerous fighter. With all that being said, again, I do like Grant Dawson. He's the much younger fighter. He doesn't have the more experience, but I do like his wrestling. I like his top pressure, and I like his cardio a whole hell of a lot more than I like Santos' cardio, so I'm picking Grant Dawson.
Bob Collins hitting up the super chat with the $9.99. You don't want to wait. Big mouth for the win. I still have him. DPS saying this is a crazy hard betting card, but it should be fun to watch. That's exactly my feelings.
Okay.
Like, I don't have a question mark kicks parlay today because it's just a really tricky one. I've got KSW 59 in the background. You'll be happy to know that UFC vet Darko Stazic just got a TKO win in the second round of his fight. So good for Darko. Patty Pumlet's a minus 800 favorite. It is what it is. Do you guys round up your picks at the end? Yes, we do. We always do that. And El Blanco is out. Matt, let's get into our next fight. Marion Reneau's taking on Macy Chiasson. It's tricky because Macy's had heart surgery. She's been off for a while. She's been at Fortis for a long time. She didn't look good against Lena Landsberg. She hasn't faced near the competition that Marion Reneau has over her career. And I know we were excited for the Yulia Stoliarenko and Julia Avila fight. Unfortunate that Julia no longer with her Oklahoma Martial Arts Academy. That was a weird Instagram post that we saw today. And B, for Yulia Stoliarenko, I hope she's all right. And listen, if they want to keep featherweight going, maybe we see Yulia up there. But listen, just hope and pray for her that she's okay.
The only thing worse for her health than cutting down to 135 would be fighting Amanda Nunes at 145. So, hey, I think that's an awful idea, Craig. I'm sorry.
It's Amanda Nunes. It's Felicia Spencer, 9-2. Probably not a good fight. Or 1-0, Danielle Wolf. But if we're talking Marion Reneau, Macy Chiasson, Austin's got Macy. Who else has got Macy? Let's see. What have you got? Doesn't seem like there's a whole lot in the chat as far as this one's concerned.
Marion Reneau, here's the thing. I know Macy Chiasson, there's a lot of question marks coming into this fight. She's been off for a little while. She's been inconsistent in the cage, to say the least. Because look at the Gina Mazzani fight. She's running forward, throwing combinations. She's really accurate. TKOs are basically immediately the second she is able to land. You look at that fighter and you're like, wow, we kind of have this sort of, maybe not technically as well done as Holly Holm, but she's got big power. She's a good striker. It was a really fun fighter, a really fun prospect to watch, kind of move up the ranks. But Lena Landsberg destroyed all of her hype. She really did. Landsberg's not a great fighter by any means, but she's a good example of a fighter who's going to be in the 15-10 range for her whole entire career. She's going to be able to beat a lot of prospects, but lose to the elite. This is a very fun fight for Macy because she's fighting someone who I would say Marion Reneau was elite at one point. I just think she isn't anymore. She has kind of aged herself out of the division. And as Craig kind of shakes his head next to me, she's 43 years old and has a full-time job. It's very hard for me to pick Marion Reneau in this fight against the much younger fighter in Macy.
Means that she's in good shape. And if we have a look at Fight Night picks, 69% of the voters going with Chiasson against the 31% that have Marion Reneau. I still have Chiasson in this one. Listen, is there an opportunity for Marion Reneau? 100%. But if Chiasson just kind of chases after her, she should be able to really push a good pace. And Marion Reneau off her back, maybe not one of the best fighters out there.
No, but her on top is one of the better fighters out there, and that's the thing. Marion Reneau's jiu-jitsu is not something you really want to play around with. And we've seen that Macy Chiasson's not great off of her back, so the one way that Marion could win this fight is try to get to the ground immediately, but other than that, I don't like her chances.
All right, Matt, we're both going Macy Chiasson. There's 478 people tuning in right now. Only 75 likes. All it takes is 1 second. Toss the like and the sub if you haven't already. And we're continuing on with this card. We have Tai Tuivasa taking on Harry Hunsucker. Now, Matt, let's bring up the odds, because when we made this video, we didn't have odds on this. The average for Tuivasa, he opened, a minus 385 on professional. He's now a minus 466. He's a big favorite in this one. For Hunsucker coming in plus 265 and now at a plus 351. Hunsucker's got a puncher's chance. So I really do want to know what the people are thinking over in the chat about this one. Because again, Hunsucker could go in there and knock out Tai Tuivasa. But Tuivasa's got a pretty darn good chin. He was already getting ready to take on a good striker. And the man himself, Don'Tale Mayes, that Hunsucker had already faced in his career. So for me, I'm going with Eric Cote, with Garrett, with a lot of the people over in the comments and saying that, yeah, I've got Tai Tuivasa here.
I think Tai Tuivasa, if he can stay dedicated to the game plan, which is a very hard thing to do for Tai Tuivasa. So again, the fact that that's the X factor for this fight tells you how confident I am in Tai Tuivasa. But if he can stay committed to the leg kick early, I don't see how he loses this fight. Harry Hunsucker has good hands. He has decent hand speed. But he has
pretty good wrestling, and he's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. Like, I know there's a lot of people talking about it, but it's tough.
Exactly, and the fact that he really only uses his boxing in his MMA fights, that's the problem. Like, we talk about fighters and, oh, this person is a black belt or that person is the wrestling in their back pocket. I really only care about how you fight when you actually fight in MMA fights. And there's a lot of people out there who have good jiu-jitsu backgrounds or they have nice wrestling backgrounds. They just decide to not really use those martial arts. And for Hunsucker, he just is primarily a boxer when he gets into the cage. He will go for some takedowns.
5 submission wins.
He will go for takedowns, and he's got good top position. 4. But a lot of his success comes from the boxing when he hurts his opponent, gets them up against the cage, and that's when he will go for the submissions, which is what I was about to get into. Tai Tuivasa is awful off his back, and there's really no other way of saying that. I look at that Sergey Spivak fight, and if you can make Sergey Spivak look like Khabib Nurmagomedov, you're doing something wrong. And Sergey Spivak's a fighter who I really like. I get excited when he fights, but he's not someone who I look at and I'm like, oh, a top 5 ranking is in their future. He looked great against Tai Tuivasa, especially with his top control. And if Hunsucker is able to crash forward and maybe get a takedown early on in this fight, he'll be able to get some sort of a submission. But I do think Tuivasa has decent enough takedown defense to at least keep this fight on the feet. I do think he has the much faster hands out of these two.
Yeah, I mean, going up and down through the comment sections, a lot of people have Tai Tuivasa. Voodoo Wiz saying, what are the 2 belts on Harry? If you want to know, it was with HR MMA, where he's the heavyweight champ over there. Those are the 2 belts. I gotta say this, if anybody missed this original video or you're new to Harry Hunsucker, his last win was against a guy that was 4-3, who had lost in what? It was like 19 seconds to the fighter that Harry Hunsucker took down and tore his elbow apart.
Yeah.
In the fight against Harry Hunsucker back in February, his opponent weighed in at 300 pounds. It wasn't a super heavyweight fight like we were supposed to have on KSW 59. It was a regular heavyweight fight. So the guy didn't cut 35 pounds. That's absolutely insane. Fail Sonnen makes a good point. Hunsucker gasses, and we've seen it in his other fights. Diego Casas hitting us up with the $4.99 super chat. Diego, listen, you were somebody who gave us grief at certain points in the comments section, and we always like the banter back and forth. I appreciate you just about more than anybody else out there. Listen, you got to be challenged.
Thank you, Diego.
And constructive criticism is something that everybody needs. Lucas saying, how's Hunsucker's chin? Well, he's lost by KO or TKO in all of his fights. And all of his fights have ended before the second round started. So you hate to see it. You love to see it. I expect to finish in this one. Somebody's going to go out. So I take like the under 2.5. And I'm going Tuivasa.
I also, Tuivasa. Should be a fun fight for as long as it lasts.
All right, Matt. We'll move into our next fight. And we consider this one a possible fight of the night. We have Adrian Yanez taking on Gustavo Lopez. And another quick plug for the website, FightNightPicks.com. It's awkward because the boys talked to Adrian, and it was a great convo. And then for Gustavo, well, he talked to our guy, Joshua Hart. Great article over there with Gustavo. So Fight Night Picks attacking it from both angles. It's such a good fight because for Gustavo, he's a decent striker. Listen, he's not like Dan Ige, a training partner, but his wrestling's good, his top pressure's great, and he has really good jiu-jitsu, and he's taking on a good level competition. So is Yanez, too, and he's younger. Like, it's really interesting, and Yanez's boxing is great.
Oh, this fight really is a clash of styles, but in the best way possible, because both guys are pretty well-rounded, and that's the cool thing about listening or even talking to Adrian Yanez. He wants the ability to show off his ground game. He just hasn't really been given that opportunity yet, and that's a bit of a humble brag if you're like, oh man, I wish I could show my jiu-jitsu, which is everyone just keeps on getting knocked out so fast. For Yanez, we talked about the hand speed, we talked about the power. Those are two things that really are unique in this weight division because you don't see a lot of guys other than like Cody Garbrandt, and that is who I'm going to compare his hand speed to. Yanez is really good at just flurrying his way into the pocket and then throwing good sound combinations. He will have to be, I'll say, somewhat reserved against Gustavo Lopez because you can't just rush forward because then you will be, at least you'll have, goodness, I'm mixing my words up. The threat of the takedown will be there for Lopez, especially if you're meeting him halfway. And if Lopez is able to get on top, I am worried about Yanez's ground game a little bit. Because there's one thing to say, oh, I work on my ground game a lot. Like, I really wish I could show that off. Adesanya said the same thing before he fought Jan Blachowicz, too. And he was bragging about how good he was at getting back up to his feet. And you saw that, yes, he was able to defend those takedowns early on, but fatigue is a real thing, and it will play a factor later on in the fight. So I'm going to say Gustavo Lopez is going to have to get the takedown. Not change my pick. He's going to have to get that takedown in the first round to win this fight, because he's going to have to make the threat of the takedown available throughout the second and third round, because if he is going takedown heavy. It's not going to give Yanez the opportunity to really let his hands go. And for Yanez, that's going to be the key. So I think Yanez is really going to have to keep this fight in the center of the cage for as much as possible and really try to let his hands go early.
Really weird odds. Yanez opened -238. Then he went up to a -196, and then the money came in on him, and he's a -227 right now. For Gustavo Lopez, open +195. Then he was at a +161. Now he's at a +183. I have a hard time. It's Pop and Popcorn 1. Anthony saying, do Canadians celebrate March Madness?
Been watching it all day.
Think of all the great Canadians that we've had in March Madness. Like,
Tristan
remember
Thompson?
Kelly Olynyk playing for Gonzaga. Remember Nick Stauskas. So many good Canadians.
He was good for Michigan State, too.
Yeah, he was good for Michigan State. But again, I look at this fight. It is tricky. I have a hard time trying to kind of figure it out because 82% of the fans at Fight Night Picks on Instagram have Yanez to 18% for Lopez. It feels like a lot of people are leaving out the man himself, Gustavo Lopez.
I'm one of those. I think Adrian Yanez is going to win this fight quite comfortably. I really do. I think his boxing is going to be really hard for Gustavo Lopez to close the distance because that's the flip side of this. It's going to be tough for Yanez to be very aggressive because he might walk into a takedown attempt from Lopez, but Lopez is also going to have to be really careful closing the distance if he's going to go for any takedowns. And any time that he's in the pocket, well, Yanez is the much faster guy between the two, and he's got the much heavier hands, so I like Yanez quite a bit in this matchup.
Adams JATX, you want to see the Fight Night Picks hoodies? We got to buy the baseball jerseys and all the other crazy stuff on the website first. Apparently, Gregor's gone fishing, according to Steven. Yeah, I've got Yanez as well. We move into our next fight, Matt. We have Cheyanne Bays taking on Montserrat Conejo. And it's a really interesting fight. I mean, listen, you saw the weigh-in. A lot of people are high on Montserrat Ruiz. They think that a lot of people are sleeping on the Rabbit or the Mad Rabbit. I have a hard time, too, because, again, with Ruiz, what does she need to do? She doesn't really cut the cage. She follows quite a bit. But when she gets in range and she can grab you, she's going to try and take you down with all of her might. And she is one small lady. I mean, she's all of 4'11" up to 5 feet. Because they have her advertised as 5 feet, but she looks short compared to a lot of different fighters. For Cheyanne Bays, she's somebody that really controls distance well, understands her striking. Her takedown defense is quite good. Like, I like what I've seen from her fights, especially, you know, her last time out with Contender Series and so on. Montserrat Ruiz has fought in big spots before. We talked about that. Her title win with, XFL in Mexico City. Huge stadium fight for a title. Awesome stuff. I hated the odds at the start of the week, and I still hate them because Cheyanne Bays is a huge favorite in this fight. It's almost like burning money if you're throwing it on her.
So I'll give my prediction, and then I'll just be brutally honest. I think Cheyanne Bays will win this fight, and she has, I'm just going to call it the Yanez effect from now on, because Yanez Antetokounmpo will try just as hard in a regular season game or a playoff game as he will in like a summer league game that no one cares about. He's just always going to try as hard as he can no matter what. And for Cheyanne, she has that X factor where every second she is in a fight, she's giving it her all in every position. And you can look at that in one way and you're like, wow, she's really putting a lot into her submission attempts or takedown attempts or really anything. You can just look at it and say, wow, she's spending a lot of energy. But she does have pretty good cardio and she does have good wrestling herself. Here's the other side of this fight. These are two people making their UFC debuts, and it's very hard to give you an honest prediction about what both people are going to do in this fight. And that's why I do agree with you wholeheartedly. It's really hard to say Cheyanne Bays should be a big favorite in a fight because there's not really a big sample size out there. I couldn't tell you, oh, I like Cheyanne against these fighters in the division, but this is the step that might be a little bit too far for her. And the same thing for Ruiz. So I'm going to stick with my pick of Bays, but I can't claim to be a massive expert on either one of these fighters if you want my honest opinion.
Ruiz coming on short notice, made the weight 100%. NJ Lev saying short notice for Ruiz. And then you've got Stockholder saying Ruiz lock, Matt the mix, so Ruiz was the bunny. Yes, some people said that Conejo was her last name, Conejo Ruiz. I looked it up, it said Rabbit. Invicta had Conejo as her nickname, so that's what I went with. But yeah, it is a good fight. And Lee Meldrum saying Stauskas played for the University of Michigan.
I thought it was State.
Oh yeah, I knew I could have helped you with that. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Craig.
All I know is Canadian references in college basketball from like 5 years ago.
You also thought DeMarcus Cousins would be good this year.
Boogie should have been good, but in this fight, yeah, I mean, I've got Cheyanne Bays. She's like she's a minus 345 favorite. Like, it's insane.
Here's the thing: I really wanted to see the Bays Who was she originally?
Kay Hansen.
Kay Hansen fight. That would have been really fun because you have two prospects who, it's not like they've both been hyped up a lot, but at least I kind of know what I'm going to get from Kay Hansen at this point. And it would have been really fun to have her against Baze, because if Baze can beat someone like Hansen, okay, then now I have a pretty good idea as to how good Cheyanne Baze is. But it is going to be really hard to say, even after this fight, like, to be completely honest, if Cheyanne Baze beats Montserrat Ruiz, I can't automatically say, like, oh, well, now she's a borderline 15 fighter. Like, it's going to take a little bit of time for you to really get a good idea as to where either fighter's ceiling is.
And a good point, too, by Anthony, and I see it up there twice. I mean, yeah, it's not short notice for Baze, but it kind of is because she was getting ready for Kay Hansen, but she trains with Emily Ducati, who was getting ready to fight Montserrat Ruiz, exactly. So it's just a whole jumble up, and I've got Baze in this one, but I don't have the other Baze in the first fight. Matt, our new co-main event. Before we talk about our co-main event, there's some important business we have to tend to. Hey, you. Yeah, you. Got Bush? Definitely do if you haven't tried the best products from our sponsor today. And Matt, that is, of course, Manscaped. Woo. After using these life-changing products, you're going to want to enjoy or join a ball sack beauty contest. I'm looking out for you because, listen, I also have an exclusive 20% off discount code. It's FNP at manscaped.com. Now, listen, we've all been there. We've needed a bit of a pick-me-up. You've listened to me talk about it all the time. You get the Crop Preserver ball deodorant. My wife gave me a weird look this morning. She's like, hey, why are you going into the office at 8 in the morning? Why are you going in there without any underwear on? Because I slapped some of this shit on my nuts, and boom goes the dynamite. I'm having a good day. You need that.
Now we know what happens in this office when I'm not around.
Well, yeah, that's about it, really, because there's not a lot of room to do much more. You can't do gymnastics, but you can use the Crop Reviver ball toner. Nice little spritz over there. But again, I mean, you head on over to the website, manscaped.com, use the promo code FNP. You get 20% off and free shipping. What can I say? You get the Perfect Package 3.0. It comes with the shed. It's a nice travel bag. The world's starting to open up. You need a toiletry bag with you so you can travel. Listen, it also comes with that essential Lawnmower 3.0. And I've talked about it before. I'm a nut shaver shaver. And I use that LED light to see what the F I'm trying to do. It's the best trimmer to help you trim up the hedges. This trimmer
all over the
features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accident thanks to advanced skin-safe technology pioneered by Manscaped. When you trim the hedges, the tree stands taller. And for me, grower not a shower, but it still works its magic. Inside the Perfect Package, you're going to find, like I said, the Crop Preserver, and Reviver. It's great stuff. Make sure you also add the refined cologne. You can find that on their site. You just waft some of that stuff in. That's a good smell. It really is. And all sorts of great stuff over there. So get 20% off and free shipping with code FNP at manscaped.com. And listen, I see that where Wormies is saying my girlfriend complains about my second beard. You gotta just hit that stuff up. It's a lot of great stuff.
Now, luckily, if you use promo code 20 or FNP, you can save 20% off your next ball trimmer, and we've got a pretty great one.
And I mean, hey, they also have the Weed Whacker. You've seen me shave my nose hair on there. I mean, listen, it's great stuff. Adams JATX. I ate the soul of the ShamWow guy. Anthony, how you feeling about that one, buddy? All right, Matt. Max Griffin's song can on. I'm gonna turn the light up a little bit because we've gotten darker. But this fight, I consider it a possible fight of the night just because it's a volatile one. Max Griffin always brings it. But so does Sung Kenan. I don't like the volume out of Kenan. That's why I went with Griffin at the start of the week. But I love the matchup.
I gotta be honest, guys. I love Craig. He is my brother. I like him quite a bit. He gets up for a Max Griffin fight unlike anybody else in the UFC. Like, there's not many versions of Craig that get this excited, but Max Griffin fighting Craig is one of the more excited versions. I think this will be a good fight, don't get me wrong, but when I look at Max Griffin, you have a 35-year-old welterweight who's never been able to crack into the top 15, and he's been in the UFC for a while now. It's not like, oh, he just hasn't been able to fight the right guys, or he hasn't had the opportunity. He's been given opportunities against big-name fighters in the past, and he's even beaten some of them. Like, he holds a win over Mike Perry, which, at least at the time, was still a very good win. My problem with Max Griffin, though, is at 35 in welterweight, you're not getting any better. And the thing with Max Griffin is we don't really see this massive new version of him between every single fight. You're not seeing Max Griffin one fight come out just box and then come out another fight. And oh, wow, he's throwing a lot more kicks now. We're still seeing the same fighter that we saw in his UFC debut or even back in the crazy fight that we saw against Leonardo Santos. He does good boxing. He's an accurate puncher. Has decent power, but not insane power. He's got okay volume. But the issue is he will gas as the fight progresses. And then you can look at Song Kanon and kind of say the same thing. I do think this fight is very down the middle. I think Kanon could go out there and easily knock out Max Griffin. I do, because the way Griffin holds his hands, he's somewhat defensively sound. But when he throws, he does leave himself very open. He'll kind of drop both hands when he throws. That worries me for Max Griffin, who's a fighter who... You hate to comment on a fighter's chin, but I do think that we've kind of seen Max Griffin's chin get worse as time's gone on. Not that he's getting TKO'd like Andrei Arlovski or anything, don't get me wrong, but you've seen in at least his more recent fights, when he gets hit, he does react to it a lot worse than he used to, and that's solely why I'm picking Song Kanon in this fight. I do think his accuracy will eventually be able to get to Max Griffin, and hey, I can openly admit, Griffin should be able to out-wrestle Kanon. I just don't think he will for a lot of this fight. I think he's going to choose to make this a striking battle, and I don't think he's going to end up being the winner of it.
I mean, it seems like a lot of people going with Song Kanon over in the comments section. He is the underdog in this fight. 55% of the Fight Night Picks fans have Max Griffin to win. I could see this one being a weird decision where everybody's upset.
True.
Some people are happy, and some people are licking their chops because they got excited, and they ended up on the right sides, but it is a really tough one. And if we head over back into the chat, Arnold Lorenz saying Max Griffin will probably win because so many people are on Song, and he's still a dog. There's also the comment from Branch Above, you're hanging out, and Urban Alterations. Are you guys tracking the success of your picks at all? Every single week in the descriptions, they're updated. It's not a good year compared to last year, but it's still early. So we're going to make a comeback, but we're doing our best. And
I'm still in the lead, so...
Yeah, by like 2.
That's fine.
And if we're focusing on this one, Matt, again, the fans, 55% Griffin, 45% Song Kanon. Max Griffin's a pretty big favorite. Open to minus 127. He's now minus 214. For Song Kanon coming back, now in the co-main event slot as the underdog, a bit of plus 175 or thereabouts, open plus 106. So all of the money this week's been coming in on Max Griffin. I still have Griffin in this one. Still like it. I love the fact that he has Max braided into the top of his hair. Good for him. I've got Griffin. You've got Song Kanon.
He's my only underdog, I think, on this card that I'm somewhat comfortable with. I like Kanon in this fight. I just think the accuracy of Kanon will get to Griffin eventually. Griffin could go out there, completely out-wrestle him. He could knock him out, but I think this is a much more even fight than the odds would suggest.
Stephen Lemon saying Griffin's Yanni's best bet. Well, now I'm nervous, but I'm still going to go with him. Now, Matt, we're talking about our main event of the evening at middleweight. This one's a big one because you have Vettori fighting Till in a main event.
Big fight.
You've got Hermansson, Shabazian lower down. Then you've got Robert Whittaker taking on Kelvin Gastelum. If a guy wins impressively in this fight, might not be a title shot, but you're still up there. You're right up at the top. $10 over in the super chat from Jack, who says Holland in the second by unhinging his jaw and swallowing Brunson like a boa constrictor. The result will be overturned due to tainted supplement.
That would be a sight to see.
It could happen, and if it does, I'm going to be really interested in that.
That was a good use of $10 in the comment section, though. That was good.
I read it out.
Hey,
you got it. You got that from me. In a fight like this, it's tricky because if it's Derek Brunson that pulls out like a gritty veteran performance like we've seen him do time and again, like he did in his last fight, where he ate Edmund Shabazian's power shots, he really did, and he withstood all that pressure and then poured it on Shabazian. I mean, poor Edmund shouldn't have been allowed in the third round, but Herb Dean was like, hey, the doctor said it was okay, so it's cool. It's a good fight. It's a great fight. It's a really tricky one. But I have a hard time where I have to rely on a guy that's had chin issues in the past versus a guy that, yeah, he gets taken down. I mean, his takedown defense isn't good. But when he's on the ground, other than the fight with Thiago Santos, he's usually somewhat mobile. He's looking for something. JP hit us up in the super chat.
He looked great against Brendan Allen, too.
With the $4.99. The Brendan Allen fight, he definitely made a huge mistake. I don't see Brunson pulling an Allen. You never know. But it is a tricky fight for me.
It really is, because for Derek Brunson, and I've seen the comments you guys in the chat, oh, well, Derek Brunson's only lost to the elite. That's true, but he has some pretty close fights with guys who are outside of the elite. Like, he did beat Elias Theodoro, don't get me wrong, but he barely beat him, and it was an awful fight, and he didn't do that much. And that's the thing for Derek Brunson. He's got that sort of Goldilocks problem where he's either too hot or too cold. He hasn't found that good range, or even just good timing, I should say, for his cardio or for his power yet. And with Holland, it'll be interesting, because Holland, sometimes he will kind of wait back and be the counter striker. So that's either going to give Brunson one of two choices. Either Brunson's not going to throw it a high volume. He will kind of stand back too and play Kevin Holland's game. And if that happens, he's going to need to right straight and get knocked out at some point in like the second round. If he fights in the way, though, where he does go in there and kind of bum rush his opponent, I understand how every time we talk about Derek Brunson, we're like, oh, that's the worst version of Derek Brunson. Not in this fight, oddly enough. I actually do think we need to see that aggressive Derek Brunson to beat Kevin Holland. Because if he's just going to stand on the outside, try to wait for a takedown attempt, and just sort of wait on the outside with Kevin Holland, he's going to get picked apart by front kicks, he's going to get jabbed 1,000 times, and then Kevin Holland's going to land a straight punch that'll really hurt him. Where with Derek Brunson, when he does crash forward, that's where his takedowns come in too. And if he's able to just keep on walking forward, he might be able to stumble into a takedown attempt through just that natural momentum, if you will. But I do still like Kevin Holland in this fight. I like his overall volume on the feet. I think he has deceptive power because he's a guy who you see a lot. Oh, he's skinny. He must not hit hard. He's got pretty good pop on his shots, and he can.
So go ahead.
Oh, and he can finish fights in a multiple different ways. He's good on the ground if Derek Brunson does go for the takedown, but on the feet, he does have really good power and really good pop in his shots, and that's why I ultimately think he'll beat Brunson.
He's a really, really tricky striker, and it was brought up in the comments section by Gazbach saying he has a poor tempo. It's a weird tempo from Kevin Holland, assuming you're talking he is in Kevin Holland. And Daniel Rodriguez also hanging out in the chat, but you're not D-Rod. It's got a big fight coming up against Mike Perry. So in this one, you're right. I mean, you look at Kevin Holland, the takedown defense isn't good. You look at Derek Brunson, classically trained wrestler. His takedowns are great, and his takedown defense doesn't have to be amazing, although it is very good, and his striking's quite good. So for Arno saying it's a pop and popcorn fight, 100% it is. Yeah. I mean, listen, the whole card for me is pop and popcorn. I've got KSW going on in the background. It's going to be an interesting night of fights, even though Bombardier, depending on where you're from. I'm going to go Bombardier because I got the Montreal Impact sweater on. Bombardier out due to acute appendicitis. Not going to be fighting World's Strongest Man, Marius Pudzianowski. But on this one, Matt, if you look at the votes at Fight Night Picks, 80% have Holland to win. 383 to 98 are the total votes. And if you look at the odds, Holland's a big favorite in around that 2-1 type of spot. So it's tricky. I mean, it's also tricky because Phoenix Gray's saying smash that like button. There's 560 people watching and only 152 likes. I think you can get us above 300. Takes 2 seconds. But again, on this one, Edwards saying Holland's cardio is bad. Brunson fought in a 3-round main event his last time out. Holland's had opportunities to fight, into the later rounds. It just hasn't gone there. So we'll see what happens.
I'm switching my pick, guys. I think Derek Brunson's going to win. I do think this is going to be one of those classic, I'm Derek Brunson, and I'm sick and tired of being a gatekeeper. I do think that's the case. It's nothing against Kevin Holland, and I think I gave a decent game plan of how Kevin Holland's going to win, but this is how Derek Brunson's going to win. Look at what Derek Brunson did in the fight against Ian Heinisch. Yes, it was a weird fight, and again, if you want to talk about weird tempo, the tempo of any Ian Heinisch fight normally going to be really weird. But Derek Brunson ate his best shots, and he even goes down in the first round. Like, he gets head kicked clean, gets knocked down, gets up, and he was able to come back. And the fact that Kevin Holland, he's a little suspect after that second round, we'll say. And it's not like I love the cardio of Derek Brunson, but Derek Brunson is decent at pacing himself in that third round on, at least. And we don't really know what we're going to get from Derek Brunson in that first round. Even in the second round, if he does go in there wild, he could get clipped. But I think the most likely scenario is that he can get past that first 10-minute kind of danger zone, if you will, to quote Kenny Loggins, and he'll be able to withstand whatever Kevin Holland can throw at him and really start to take this fight over in the second half, similar to what we saw against the Edmund Shabazians. So I will switch one of my picks. I'm going to say Derek Brunson wins a unanimous decision against Kevin Holland.
Still going with Holland in this one. I think he's going to get a huge win here. I think he's going to continue to ride the momentum that he had from last year. Cody Keller hitting us up in the super chat. You're saying Holland by round 2 TKO. Thanks, guys, for the picks. The best in the biz, hashtag Iowa City.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Stephen Lemon with the comment of the night, Derek Brunson, fight game, Frank Ocean. 100%, I love the blonde look, and he kept it for this fight.
He did.
You got to keep riding the momentum. But yeah, I still have Holland in this fight. I think it's a lose or learn type of thing with Holland, and we've seen him learn from some of those losses. With Santos, takedown defense was an issue. When it was against Brendan Allen, dumb mistakes. Like, it was Holland's fight to lose. He had Allen hurt, cracked, and then he went down into it. If you look at the fight that he had against Jacare is a great wrestler and a great grappler. That's why he was at the top of the world for, what, a decade?
But that's my problem.
In the UFC?
Kevin Holland beat Jacare, but he didn't beat Jacare. Like, he beat him in a way that you can beat an MMA fight. But there was nothing in that fight that said Kevin Holland is a better mixed martial artist than Jacare.
And he knocked him the F out.
I understand that's a weird sentiment to make, but it's also the truth. Like, Conor McGregor beat Jose Aldo, but he didn't beat him in a way that made me leave that fight thinking like, oh, wait, he's the better martial arts fighter than him. He beat Jacare in a very weird way that was really cool to watch, don't get me wrong. but I really doubt he's going to be able to throw an overhand right off his back that knocks out Derek Brunson. So, I've seen Derek Brunson lose to top-tier guys, but he loses in a way that's like, oh, he gets broken down as the fight goes on. I don't think he loses to Kevin Holland.
TJ Gavin, good question. Any reason you don't upload the Picks podcast to Google Podcasts anymore? Do they not pop up anymore? Because I send them out and they go to Spotify and they go to iTunes or Apple Podcasts. So if they're not on Google Podcasts, I'll look into that. But if you're ever looking for the shows as podcasts, they're available out there at FightNightPicks.com. You know, you're out there every week. You're sporting the sponsors. You got to check out Manscaped. You got Bush. But yeah, there's all sorts of great stuff with Fight Night Picks. Matt's going with Brunson. Bailey Ripplinger's also going with Brunson. We'll go back and forth up and down this card. So let's do it. And as we always say, let's get into it. We go down to the bottom. Bruno Silva, JP Buys. Again, I want to know what people are thinking because it's a back and forth. I'm now with the underdog in Bruno Silva here. You still got JP Buys, but I worry. Listen, if Buys beats Bruno Silva, awesome. I think you have an opportunity to, fight a 20 to 15 guy, which is saying something because this flyweight division's not very stacked. But Bruno Silva's been in there with some guys that he was supposed to lose against, gave a good account of himself. I think this is a fight where he's going to break through and get a win.
He very well could. And again, I could look really dumb for picking Buys because it would be a case where you think one guy's washed, but losing to known fighters is sometimes better than beating unknown fighters, and this could be one of those cases. But I just think the cardio of Buys is a little bit better, and I think he'll be able to withstand whatever storm Bruno Silva brings.
And for TJ with the podcast, it could be because we switched up the website at the end. So again, I got to look into it, and we'll move into our next fight. We have Montel Jackson taking on Jesse Strader. And I think Jesse Strader has about a snowball's chance in hell of winning this fight.
It's going to be tough. And Montel Jackson, just a really well-rounded mixed martial artist. And for Strader, he does have an opportunity, but I really hate it that we have to say, oh, this guy's opportunity is one punch. That means you don't really have a chance to win. So Strader, because MMA is a weird sport, could get that Hail Mary win, but I really like Montel Jackson in this fight.
All right, Matt, let's go into our next one. We have Giles and Dolidze hopping over into the comments section. Is Buys not significantly larger in that fight? Not really. It's just that picture, which Yako's saying. But hey, what is the pick of JP? What do I have to work with at the start of the week? I have nothing. Nothing. I could go black and white with the Contender Series pictures, but that just looks stupid. So I get creative. I find them on IG and the internet, and then I do my photoshopping. Trevin Giles taking on Roman Dolidze. Listen, if Jesse Strader wins, some solution gets a shout out next week. How about that one? Rogue's Beer hanging out. We appreciate you as well. Okay, in this fight, Giles, Dolidze, yikes. I mean, for Trevin Giles, power jab. He has decent, movement on the feet, and he cuts the cage well, but he doesn't throw a ton of output. He can knock guys out. He's beaten very good fighters. He's beaten Ryan Spann to win regional belt. Like, he's really fought good guys and beaten them. Roman Dolidze is another good guy, and I have Roman Dolidze to win the fight.
I like Roman Dolidze a lot in this. And also, why do you keep on bringing up the power jab at Trevin Giles? Like, he's got good striking.
Nice.
Yeah, but he's more just like, I think of the overall volume, and then he'll land a power shot. He's got an okay jab, but I don't think he's like Floyd Mayweather in there with it. I think he might be able to stifle some of the timing of Dolidze if Dolidze does get really wild with his shots. But other than that, I like Roman quite a bit in this fight.
Yeah, both of us liking Roman in that fight, Matt. We have Leonardo Santos, the living legend. The guy hasn't lost in years and years. He's taking on Grant Dawson. Leonardo Santos has better boxing. Leonardo Santos throws a nice leg kick. Leonardo Santos has probably better pure jiu-jitsu. Grant Dawson has force of will. He's younger, and I'm assuming his gas tank up a weight class is really going to kick in here. I got Dawson, but again, this is such a pop and popcorn fight. I wouldn't touch it. I'm sure if Santos wins, everybody's at our heads or at our necks in the comments section. Have fun with it, but I'm going Dawson.
So you forgot one more thing that Santos has that Dawson doesn't. He's old enough to be his dad, and I think that's also a pretty important fact to bring up. So I like Dawson quite a bit in this fight.
Mojo HD, you throw that hashtag out there, you got to hit up that super chat. Now, Matt, our next one, we have Marion Reneau taking on Macy Chiasson. I got Fortis MMA's Macy Chiasson in this fight, but this is another one of those ones where Marion Reneau, you can't count her out. I get it. She's 43. She's a gym teacher. She's got a day job. That's smart. That's just straight up smart to do. So you have financial security and a nice pension when you retire. But in a fight like this, it's tricky. I mean, Macy's looked bad at points. I mean, she's a former featherweight. The weight cut seemed to go quite well. Physically, everything going for her. Marion Reneau's been in there against a tougher competition. She's on a losing streak. I've got the younger fighter here.
Macy's so much better at striking, it's not even funny. And Marion Reneau has oddly good power. It's really weird. Like, she drops Sarah McMahon with an overhand right. If she connects, she can land, but she doesn't have very fast hands, and that's going to be a big issue for her in this fight. Her best position, too, if she can get on top of Macy, she will be able to get something off, I would imagine, on the ground, but I don't like her chances doing that. I like Macy quite a bit.
Matt, both of us going with Macy. Chassan, branch above, also has Macy, and apparently, Matt, people don't have kids when they're 14.
I was joking. He's just a lot older than him.
All right.
Come on, guys.
I mean, it could be, like a teen mom situation. Tuivasa taking on Harry Hunsucker. Harry Hunsucker has a puncher's chance. I'll give him that.
Like, he's got a great name.
You
Harry
have to
Hunsucker's fun to say.
Harry Hunsucker seems like an honest guy. Talked to James Lynch it was more than a month ago, where he said he gave up drinking and he wanted to make it into the UFC. Knocked out a guy that was 4-3 and weighed 300 pounds. And then you make it to the UFC. That's the stuff that dreams are made of.
That's how easy it is, guys.
Like, maybe he just grabbed a pair of, like, old gloves. Like, I went into a convenience store today. I'm not lying. And they had a, like, it wasn't watercolor, but it was an oil painting of Manny Pacquiao. You got to check that out. I'm not joking. Okay. Maybe he saw something like that, put his hand up against it, sucked in the powers like the Monsters, and we have Harry Hunsucker 2.0. I just don't see it. I'm going with Tuivasa. And for Cody Kelleher, I've been to Iowa.
There's a fun fact about Craig. I thought Tuivasa was going to beat Junior Dos Santos, and although he did not, I definitely think he's going to beat Harry Hunsucker if I thought that at some point in your life you were going to be able to beat Junior Dos Santos, so I like Tuivasa quite a bit.
All right, Matt, and apparently Rogue's Beer would buy a car from a guy named Harry Hunsucker. Of
course you would.
Lorthos the Legend saying it's going to be a big Hunsucker upset. I could see an upset in our next fight. Yanez, Lopez, tricky fight. It's going to go one of two ways. Yanez defends the first few takedowns, starts to open up with his hands, or Lopez takes him down, holds him down, and that's the way the entire fight goes. So I love it. TJ Gavin hitting us up in the super chat earlier. Forgot to mention that.
TJ.
It should be a great fight. And I have a hard time on this one too.
I never said I did. I think Adrian Yanez is going to win this fight quite comfortably. I do think his takedown defense is going to be more than enough to keep this fight standing with Lopez. And I do think Lopez has decent striking. I'm not discrediting his striking whatsoever. I just think Adrian Yanez has that like top tier boxing in this division. I do think he'll be able to just out-volume and outpower him.
Matt, I appreciate you over in the super chat. You get me. Yeah, I don't have a parlay this week because it is a tricky one. And listen, I just want to rack up some of those points with the picks, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I've got Yanez as well. We move into our next fight, Cheyanne Bays taking on Montserrat Conejo, and I've got Cheyanne Bays in this one.
I do, but again, like, I know these fighters. I know what they both do, but it's not like you have a bunch of tape to go back and study for either one of them. So I do like Cheyanne Bays in this fight, but it's tough to give a prediction. And there isn't, though, Craig. Let's just be honest. Like, you have two people making their UFC debuts who haven't fought high levels of competition outside the UFC. They're decent fighters, don't get me wrong, but you're going to learn a lot about both of them after tonight.
I'm going to disagree with all that, but we're both going with Cheyanne Bays. We move into our co-main event of the evening. We have Max Griffin taking on Sung Kenan, and split again on the pick we are, because, Matt, I can see it. Let me give some props to Sung Kenan, because we kind of set it up a weird way when we went at this one originally. Sung Kenan has really, really good power, and he can mix things up well. He can throw in combination. He doesn't do it a lot. It's a lot more single shots, but there's so much power that he can back his opponents up. We've seen Sung Kenan get backed up on his own, and for Griffin, he's got a lot of volume, a lot of trickery with him. He'll change levels quite a bit. He'll throw some feints here and there. His wrestling's good. Again, am I higher on Max Griffin than most people? Sure I am, but I've got Griffin in this one, and he's a 2-1 favorite for a reason.
Max Griffin's the same age as LeBron James, and I do think at a certain point that is going to affect you. I do think that we're starting to see the regression of Max Griffin. I don't think he's getting better. That's definitely the case, so I do like Sung Kenan in this fight.
All right, Matt, you've got Kenan, and then in our main event of the evening, Derek Brunson taking on Kevin Holland. This is your last chance. Are you sure?
I like Derek Brunson in this fight. I do, because I'm going to pull Colby Poor, if you're watching, shout out to him. My best friend, whenever I'm going to bet on basketball, I'm like, hey, Colby, who are you going to pick? And whoever he tells me, I pick the opposite. And I saw how confident everyone was picking Kevin Holland. And I got to be honest, I do think Derek Brunson has a lot of different wrinkles, and especially just kind of veteran savvy and experience that he can bring into this fight. And the fact that we do see Kevin Holland tiring 3-round fights and cardio, again, for Derek Brunson is weird because he's a very explosive fighter. He goes for, high impact takedowns. He's a very big power puncher. He's got good cardio, though. He's not a guy who's going to tire like a Yoel Romero or a Paulo Paulo Costa, where you can obviously tell in a 3-round fight that they tire as it progresses. I like Derek Brunson. I think he's got the wrestling advantage, and I do think Kevin Holland has phenomenal ground game. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think he has the type of ground game that's going to completely take out the wrestling of Derek Brunson. So I do think Brunson will eventually get a takedown, whether it's the 3rd round, whether it's the 4th round. I just think at some point Brunson will be able to start overtaking this fight.
Yeah, don't see it for old Derek Brunson. And listen, let's go full transparency. At the start of the week, when I was doing my research for this one, I had Brunson in my head as winning this fight. And the more and more tape I watched, and the more I kind of considered it, I sided with Holland. I mean, again, you talk about the explosiveness. I like the fact that he understands his range very well. When we see fighters, it's easy to pick on like a Stefan Struve. It's easy to pick on certain guys. Was Joaquin Buckley able to get in on him early?
A lot.
100% he was. And then
worries
Kevin
me.
Holland was able to just tough that MFer out. I like Kevin Holland in this fight for a lot of different reasons. He's got a black belt in jiu-jitsu under Travis Lutter. He continues to gain in those areas. The takedown defense might not be all that great, but I think he threatens more than we've seen from a lot of guys that have fought Derek Brunson on the ground. And his striking, very, very sneaky. Again, you talk about it with the tempo. It's all over the place. Like, it's really weird. So it's hard to gauge a guy like Kevin Holland. It's like facing a pitcher that has like 6 different pitchers. It's like going up against Daisuke Matsuzaka back in 2007. You could get a slurve. You could get a forkball. You could get a fastball, changeup, curveball, whatever.
He had a lot.
Daisuke was on fire that year. So, really, Kevin Holland is my Daisuke Matsuzaka, and I'm going all out with the 2007 Red Sox.
I'm trying to think of a good left-handed pitcher. Derek Brunson's my Randy Johnson. He might be a little bit older, but listen, he just got to the Yankees, and we're happy to have him nonetheless. So I'm going to pick Derek Brunson. I do think tonight's main event will be phenomenal, though.
All right, Matt. I'm really looking forward to it. Again, make sure you check out our sponsors. We've got Manscaped over there. You go over to the website, manscaped.com. Use promo code FMP. You get 20% off and free shipping. And I can't stress it enough. Check out the website, fightnightpicks.com. There's so many Fight Night Picks fans that don't know it exists. They don't even know there's a podcast. But if you head over there and you check it out, there's some great stuff. We have articles. We have write-ups on the interviews. We have the betting guides. There's a betting guide for this weekend from Josh Hart. There's all sorts of great stuff. And if you head into the chat from now until UFC 261, use promo code FMP25. You're going to get 25% off your order. Matt, there's great stuff over there.
There is.
Unfortunately, there isn't the sweater that you have, but I've got a handful of great merch. I mean, there's the hats. The Fight Night Picks hats. You get a maple leaf on the back. They're Under Armour hats. It's good stuff. There's also like the MLG jerseys as well. So you check that out.
And wait, is there a sale?
Yeah, there's a sale. FNP 25% off. And listen, it should be great. Funky McClunky's hanging out. Everybody's hanging out. Branch Above, Bailey Ripplinger, everybody having a good time. We appreciate all of you. You make it all worthwhile at the end of it. So I'm really looking forward to tonight's card. I've got KSW 59 in the background because we're worldly MMA fans. And we're really looking forward to UFC 261 next weekend. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt. And as we always say, let's get into it. And thanks so much for joining in with Fight Night Picks !Kicks. Make sure you head on over to the website, fightnightpicks.com. I know a lot of Fight Night Picks fans don't know that we have an all-inclusive website that hosts some of our YouTube content. You can find the new interviews with Joe Selecki and Sasha Plotnikov with our newest addition to the team, JHK MMA. We also have other great articles in the podcast as well that are over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Maybe you want to check out this weekend's full card betting guide. What's Joshua Hart thinking this weekend? Hey, maybe his best bets are JP Bays and Grant Dawson. All kinds of great stuff on the site. But the thing that I'm most excited to show you about, the shop, the Fight Night Picks shop. You want to wear the shirts and the different things that we wear on air. You can check it all out there. Maybe you want your own Under Armour t-shirt. Well, I've got a special deal for you from now until UFC 261. If you head on over to the shop, use the promo code FNP25 and you're going to save 25% off your order because I want you to be able to have some of this great Fight Night Picks gear for yourself. Use that code in the coupon section. You're going to save 25% off. So FNP25 from now until next weekend's UFC 261.